What else with Corey, man? This guy can podcast like nobody can. What else with Corey, man? You will look deep inside of yourself and feel something you've never felt when he asks what else with Corey, man.
Greg Ham, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to being with you this morning.
Describe to me what I'm looking at. I see a wise man's office, I feel like.
You see a lot of books that I've thumbed up there. Some of them I've read or listened to. All of them I'm just hold up to my head, believing I'll get a little knowledge from it. You see my passion over there. I love to be outdoors, not always harvesting, a lot of times just thinking. So it is what I would call my refuge, is to be outside.
Did you learn that early on? Being outside gives your mind a chance to spread out and think. Did you learn that early on?
I did. Working with, I didn't know if I could work with creatives. What I've learned later in life is I feel called to the artisan spirit, to the gifting that artists have, and all of us need team. At some level, we all have a tribe around us. And for them, specifically, I got a passion for it. But there was a specific day, probably in late 89 or early 90, where I'm like, it's going to frustrate me, but I believe the frustration is worth what will come. And so out of that, then I had to find an outlet. So I've always loved the outdoors. I didn't know it would become my full refuge, to watch the morning come to life. And it was my creative space, and it was my time to remember what's important.
Do you have a favorite outdoor space where you currently live?
I do. It's about 50 minutes from my house, a little farm that we have, and I go to and enjoy being around it. Actually, there's a couple, but I enjoy walking. I enjoy being out, especially in the fall, especially in the spring.
I've already learned a few things in our few moments together, but for people who are listening, give me 3 things we don't know about you, which wouldn't be too hard. You've never been on this podcast before, but 3 things.
I got married at 20 and have been married 39 years to my bride, Pamela. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a grandbaby and 2 pretty good son-in-laws. You know what I'm saying? So Rachel and Kate. Rachel's my youngest. Kate's my oldest, 34 and 32. And our little marigold Jean, 10 months old. Come on, I'm a granddaddy.
What do you like most about being a grandfather?
Everything. Dude, it is. Everybody says it, but until you do it, you have no clue how it makes me feel. When she looks at me or hears my voice enter the room, like melts me. And it's like, it's reminiscent to me of the childlikeness of, that's how God views us every time, and I forget it. And to me, it's just a great current word picture of watching this development and just desire to be with both ways. And it's awesome. Last thing, I grew up in a family business in Florida, the youngest of 5. The only one to move away, the only one in my family that moved away.
Before we jump into that right there, one last question about that bookshelf behind you. Is your favorite book sitting up there? And if so, which one is it?
Yeah, Good to Great. Jim Collins is a great business book. There's a book up there, Running with Giants, which is John Maxwell, which is, if you had a chance to take a lap with the greats of Hebrews in the Bible, what would that lap consist of? Running. Those would just be a couple.
Is good to great the analogy of what seats on the bus, who's on the bus?
That is correct. Comes out of that book. So it's not just getting the right people on the bus, but getting people on the right seat on the bus. Or, as we would say, open the door to let people off the bus, because it might be better for them. We might be holding somebody almost hostage in their career because we got them on the wrong seat on the bus.
One of the greatest metaphors I've ever read, and it still sticks with me, 20, 25 years later.
It's got the flywheel in it. It's good is the enemy of great. Some great moments in that book.
Yeah.
If you're going to strive for greatness, you're going to let go of good, which goes back to hunting. If you're going to harvest, you're going to let some walk.
Dad had an automotive tire sales company.
That is correct. It was an automotive tire business. My brother and his son are still involved in. My mom and dad have since passed, but I learned a lot of great skill set at a young age because you had to, not because it wasn't a if you want to or not.
What's one big lesson you learned from mom and dad in business world that you can still see you using in your everyday walk?
We have four pillars under our company right now, 1A, that we would say we stand on, and it's trust, common sense, work ethic. All three of those, I would say, came from my first mentor, which would be my dad. My dad and I'm not going to paint that we had this glorious picture. We butted heads all the time because I was a son and I was an employee. And when you were the employee son, you were held at a little higher mark because you were the example. And so there would be days where it clashed us, but so many things I learned that I didn't realize till I was about 23. But our fourth pillar is efficiency. But three of those pillars, I would say, came from that era. My dad was common sense to the hilt. Nobody outworked him. And he just taught us to do what we said we would do.
Do you look at tires differently because of the family business? Like, do you know how to shop for a tire?
I know how to go in there and say, you got to have a better deal for me, brother, because this isn't going to work. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to, like, this is a business I grew up in. We're kindred. Help me out today.
Greg, you and I share a similarity, and I heard you in an interview tell this story, and I lit up because it was a season in my life, a short season, that really taught me work ethic. And you and I worked at UPS unloading trucks in the middle of the night.
We did.
That was a rough job for a 19-year-old getting that call at 2 a.m. going, "Are you coming in?" I'm like, I overslept. It's the middle of the night, sir. That was tough. And you're by yourself.
They will cause you to have work ethic.
Yeah, and you're pushing these boxes out of the truck. You're by yourself, and you are physically moving for hours.
That was my first job here not my first job, but my Pam and I got married in '85, and I went to work through the night, going to school during the day. I found out after about 3 months that if I learned these addresses, I could make another $1.40 an hour. And I get to load the little trucks versus unload the big trucks. And so I learned, I was like, give them to me. Pam got me on some flashcards and we learned them.
I wish I had a Pam in 1987.
But you know what? It was I stayed 5 years through while I was in school.
Wow.
I crammed 4 into 5. I crammed 4 years into 5. I was on the 5-year plan. We were married the whole time, except for 1 year that I was in college. And I would not have graduated college without my wife.
And if I remember correctly, UPS paid pretty well.
Hey, full medical, dental, and vision for coverage on me and my wife both at that age, and made great money. Maybe if I'd looked at my hourly rate, I may have made more then than I make now. I'm not even sure, if you look at hours. But no, it was a great place, though it was a hard place. It was, But you know what? About 5 of those people from that era, so that'd be 85 to 89, 84 to 89, I still kept up with some of them.
Should I read into that? You're telling me relationship matters?
Relationship be one of the highest things I value. I say most of my stuff is adaptive, so nothing I say more than likely is original. I'll go ahead and disclaim that at the front. I believe relational equity trades at a higher commodity value than equity.
Say that one more time.
I believe relational equity trades at a higher commodity value than equity.
All right.
There's many things in my life that I have done that were not purchasable. There's many things in my life I have done or been part of, or experiences I've been part of, that I would not have had the equity to pay for it. And yet I have experienced on both occasions, on multiple occasions.
What do you remember most from the mailroom at Forefront Records?
The mailroom at Forefront, we were in the kitchen. So Forefront was crafted in the kitchen of the management company. So Brock and Associates was the management company that managed several acts, DeGarmo and Key being the main one. but over the years had managed Pharaoh and Pharaoh and a bunch of other acts, but DeGarmo and Key, and then managed DC Talk. So that was right when DC Talk was coming online and being signed. And back then in the cassette was a Fallout accordion paper that was the merch of DeGarmo and Key. So you could buy it. And so I was fulfilling those merch orders out of that mailroom in a closet off the kitchen, a true accordion closet. That was my area. And I was the third employee.
Permission to fan out a little bit. I jump into Christian music in 1984 because our youth pastor would say, if you like Journey, you'll like DeGarmo and Key. If you like
comparison,
if you like Doobie Brothers and or whoever, you'll like Petra, and so on and so on. And I'd go buy these cassettes. My mom would help me with my money, and I would pull out the accordion sized cassette cover because I love covers. And I remember seeing a Greg Ham. I completely remember that name. I didn't get a chance to say this to you when we finally met like a year ago. I remember that name, and I've always wanted to just meet these people because I was the kid that read the lyrics, read the executive producer, read the president, stared at the album artwork because it was a big deal to me. And so this is so great to have this moment with you right now. A decade later from that mailroom, you're the president and CEO of Forefront Records. Brag about your roster for a little bit.
Man, we were just blessed to be entrusted with the kind of artists that we got entrusted with. So DC Talk, Audio Adrenaline, Jeff Moore in the Distance, Rebecca St. James, Big Tent Revival, Skillet, Bleach. We had the whole household, Skillet and Bleach. We had, 7 Day Jesus, Code of Ethics. You get later in there to Stacey Arico. So many, just great. And there's some that you're going to tell me that I didn't remember. And somebody's going to say, man, you didn't remember my name. Put me on the spot like that. Just great talent. And it's funny because I'm just coming off of a 30-day sabbatical of the tyranny of the urgent, from the tyranny of the urgent. And I just tried to think for the last 30 days at 100,000 foot level to try to think long-term strategy. And it took me back to 89, 90, 91, 2001, and just try to remember what were we doing. And we're doing the same thing now, artist development. Artists are never not being developed. It doesn't matter at what age. Just like we as people are always arriving. We don't arrive here on this earth. We're arriving. It's an ing. And to me, that's what artist development is. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. And I want to say one more thing, but I want to make sure we hit that part first for the talent roster. That was the greats that we got to work with.
I've been a DC Talk fan since the moment I heard them. Greg, when did you know we're on to something? When was your moment when you knew there's something here?
Yeah, I would say, well, and that's what I was going to say. I want to hit this part. I had 3 mentors. My dad was my first mentor. Dan Brock, who was the president of Forefront and the president of Brock & Associates, was my second mentor. And I would call him my independent mentor during those independent years. And then Bill Hearn, who passed away several years ago at a young age of 57 from cancer, was my corporate mentor. I would go back to Dan Brock. So in that original was Dan and Eddie, Ron Griffin, and Dana Key were the 4 originals in Forefront. Dan and really Ron Griffin, that's what came about DC Talk at that really infancy stage. And then I got to come in right after that and really see those seasons grow. Really from DC Talk to New Thing to Free at Last to Freak. And somewhere in there between New Thing and Free at Last, if you remember, we did Rap, Rock, and Soul, which had the standee with them on top of each other, the 3 of them like the monkeys. You just saw something that was perpetuating. You were seeing it on the road. You were seeing merch go crazy. They opened for DeGarmo and Key on the Take the Pledge, Read the Word tour, which was the NIV Student Bible collaboration. And then you watch the audience just they were not done, And I know Dan Brock and I were in Chicago at Wheaton, I remember, and they were just chanting, and their set's over, intermission is coming, and for another 5 minutes, DC talk, DC talk. And it was just, I think anything in life, when you're part of something bigger than yourself and you know that and you get out of your own way.
My wife saw Michael W. Smith at the Notre Dame Joyce Center where they play basketball, and it was the album that had I Will Be Here for You on it. Mm-hmm. And I was working nights at a mainstream radio station, Greg, and I gave her my tickets. She went with her girlfriend. I talked to her the next day, and I said, how was it? And she got to meet Michael, and she's like, he was very nice, very cordial. She goes, but there was these three guys. I said, what three guys? She goes, these opening band three guys, and they were everywhere all at once. It was electric. And I go, who was it? She goes, I have no idea. I've never heard of them before. And then years later, she goes, there they are. We were in a Sears at the mall, and they had monitors playing during like back to school. And she said, that's them. And it was a video for Jesus Is Just All Right. Oh, DC Talk.
It's so funny, Corey, that you say that, because it's like when you say just that little story you just told. So at Auburn Hills, the Palace in Detroit, they're on the Go West tour and on the Change Your World tour with Michael. In that around that same time, they're at Reunion Arena at the CBA convention, and Toby's rapping on Steven Curtis Chapman record. And then you come around and you just referenced somebody else. Who else did you just reference? Robert Deaton. You said Jesus Is Still All Right. Robert Deaton, my TV client. So all these are under our umbrella right now. Michael, Steven, Robert Deaton. And Robert and George produce Jesus Is Still All Right out in the desert in California. The most expensive video we'd ever spent at that moment was that video. And that video, if you watch it today, still holds.
How much was it? Do you remember?
Somewhere, it was north of $75,000 in 1991.
And in your genre, that was a big deal.
Dude, that was like unheard of. And visually, we realized how visual, because we didn't have artists that were all at radio. We were breaking artists. If you remember that first DC Talk song that went to radio was Lean on Me. And after you took all the rap out, all it said was Lean on Me.
That's what presidents of labels think about when they're getting ready with songs. Guys, it only says 3 words, but it worked, right?
But we had radio success with DC Talk. Come on.
Greg, I glanced at some bio somewhere, and I thought I saw global marketing and sales or something with EMI, but I also saw the name Coldplay. And for the benefit of my 17-year-old who absolutely loves that band, did you work with them in some sort of capacity?
So as part of the global marketing team, so as bios do, so I got to work with a lot of different things. So during the Stacey Orico success that we had around the world, her record truly broke around the world. And I got to be part of EMI's global marketing team, which is Capital Virgin. And if an artist got on that team, there was 30 people that would meet 5 times a year in London. And if you got on that, then it became a priority for the whole company. So all 60 territories would have to have a marketing plan. So we worked on, so a Janet Jackson or a Coldplay, Corinne Bailey Rae, KT Tunstall, the Beatles 40 number ones, because it was a repack, but that made the global priority team. Stacey Orico made that global priority team. And so it was just a great thing. So that is how I got to work with Coldplay.
I love the story behind 1-8 Entertainment. I read here, inspired by a January 8th birthday that you share with Elvis and David Bowie. Music nerd right here, so I'm very jealous of you. All I have is Patrick Swayze, Edward Norton, Christian Slater, and Robert Redford.
Come on.
I mean, I love movies.
Cassidy, brother.
But it's also your favorite scriptures.
Three of my favorite scriptures are 1-8. It's interesting as you go through, and I was like, man, there's a lot of 1-8 scriptures that are like pretty foundational. And so Daniel 1-8, if I had one book in the Bible or one character in the Bible, Daniel would be my guy, because he lived most of his life in the mainstream consistently. So it's something I would strive for. I wish I could be consistent the way he lived a consistent life and did not waver no matter the circumstance. He held strong. And so that's an aspiration for me. So that would be foundation. Daniel 1:8, Daniel purposed in his heart that he wouldn't defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested of the prince of the eunuchs not to defile himself. And that's that story where the three Hebrew children and him said, let us be on this, not the king's diet, but our diet, and we'll be stronger after the time. And they were, which started and they're probably 16, 17, 15, 16 that time, but took a strong stance because of their faith. And then Joshua 1:8-9, which is meditate on the word to be strong and courageous. And so to me, it's foundation, strength to fulfill purpose, which is Acts 1:8. But you will receive power after that the Holy Spirit comes upon you to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. That, to me, is missionally for me something I want to be part of. I've always had the privilege to work globally with the content that we get to deal with. When you look right now, the top 20 churches in the world, 18 are not in North America. So Southeast Asia, South America, including Brazil and South Africa, is where the church is growing. And we have a genre of music because it's not classified by its by its musical styling, it's classified by its lyrical content, has a chance to cycle everywhere, more than other genres.
What do your clients need brutally honest advice about, and are you the guy that gives it to them?
Back to our pillars, yes. Trust. So we want to tell you the truth, not hype you. Work ethic, those same things apply right here. And efficiency. So I would say the number one thing is probably that efficiency metric when we're working with our talent of how we get through things and how we have clear actions and how we're getting to the next steps. So I believe there's a trust relationship with the artist we're entrusted with our team. And when you're talking me, you're talking a team of people that are helping us accomplish the mission. I would tell you, yeah, I'll stop right there.
Give me the last time you had a brutally honest conversation with an artist and maybe just a hint of what it was about.
Yeah, I think we live in a comparison society for all of us more than we ever have in existence because everything is at fingertips. And if we're not careful, we get sucked into the vortex of comparison. Might be the number one creativity killer to me because it's instant. And it used to be like we would stay after something and you knew it was good when it started working. But we did a lot of stuff before we ever knew it was going to connect to the consumer. And so I think just more of an honest conversation of get off the darn device, And I think it plagues every artist, even if they're not honest with themselves about it, because it plagues all of us. It's the number one what's the number one reason girls with self-image or suicide, what would it come back to? I think it comes back to not being enough and just the beauty that we are enough today when we woke up because of whose we are and who created us.
What's something Greg Ham will never say no to?
It depends on the year. I have years of yes. So my answer is yes. What is your question? There's years of that where I lean into yes, and there's things where not so much that. So ask the question one more time.
What is something you can never say no to? You'll never say no to.
I've always wanted to hunt at the Blenheim Castle. That's Churchill's childhood home. And they do an annual hunt there that is a partridge hunt. And if I was asked, my calendar would clear. Yeah, if I got an invite, that would be one where the answer would be yes. And then I would start figuring out how I'm displacing everything I was committed to.
If your former alma mater called and made you a deal you can't refuse and said, Greg, come teach a semester, come teach a course, what would it be about?
Probably back to what I said earlier, just how important relationship is in the scope of business. You know, we're all selling, you're selling, I'm selling, we're all salesmen, saleswomen at our core, whatever it is, whatever the agenda is. And so I think that comes through relationship and people. And I like to make a lot of deposits. And when I need a withdrawal, I want to believe I've made enough deposits that it doesn't even feel like a withdrawal.
What are you most excited about right now?
Man, just coming off of this last 30 days, I feel more purposeful than I have maybe since the early to mid 90s. You know, our world feels crazy. The business of what we all do is always like on edge. How the music's going to be consumed, who's going to consume it, reaching that consumer through multiple avenues. And yet I feel as bullish because I feel as purposeful. And I think purpose overrides the rest. And the artists we're entrusted with right now, I mean, we have Michael W. Smith, CeCe Winans, Steven Curtis Chapman, Charity Gale, Joseph O'Brien, and then Robert Deaton, who is doing the CMA Awards and doing Nashville's Big Bash on CBS, that are more positive shows for those moments. And I just feel, I don't know, I feel very, very purposeful. And I believe God's given me a renewed passion to serve our artists the best we know how. And that's all we can ask for. And I got a team of people that was like in the Forefront days to me that are called, they're not doing a job. They're called to something more, just like these artists are called to something more. And you mentioned Toby. I mean, back to that early time, Toby would come in my office and Rebecca St. James would come in my office and, you know, she would give me a verse at 15 years old. She would say, Greg, I read this verse today. I just thought it would help you. And, you know, Toby and I had long conversations about how we're impacting kids to take the hope of Jesus Christ to kids who need hope through a vehicle of music was most of our mission at Forefront at that time. And music's powerful. It's important. It will carry hope and truth. And that, to me, way outpaces business. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your consistency in doing it and your approach to doing it. I love what you put off, you know, and how you love, like when you did the interview with Toby at CMB, I love your passion. And passion you can't conjure. You either have it or you don't. And so, Corey, thank you for having the passion for what we're all passionate about.
What Else with Corey Mann? Original music and theme song by Chris Cron. Share this episode with a friend, and thanks for listening.